Broadcasting across California, California's only statewide political show. You're watching The Issue Is.
And welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Elex Michaelson. Our exclusive guest this week, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. He joins us on a week where he proposed historic spending. A year ago, California was estimating a $54 billion deficit during the recession. Well, this week, the governor announced we have a $76 billion surplus. In Sacramento this week, the governor formally laying out a $100 billion spending plan that needs to be approved by the legislature. Part of that is a $12 billion tax rebate, $600 checks for those making under $75,000 a year, which is about 2 out of 3 Californians. He is also proposing a record $12 billion for homelessness services and a $6.2 billion program for small business grants. He is also pitching $1.5 billion to clean up and beautify the state. He ditched the suit to personally help clean up the state during an event with Caltrans near downtown Los Angeles. And that is where we caught up with him on Tuesday. Governor, welcome back to The Issue Is.
Good to be with you.
And first time in a T-shirt. So
I think you're the only guy who can get me in a damn T-shirt out of my suit and tie. But, you know, considering where we are, it seems appropriate.
All right, so we'll talk more about that in a second. But let's start with the big top line, most important headline of the week, which is a $76 billion surplus in California. There were some estimates that there was going to be a $54 billion deficit last year.
Yeah.
How does that happen? How do you go from $54 billion deficit to $76 billion surplus?
It's the resiliency of an economy. I mean, you know, some people said, why do you talk about California roaring back? I said that at Dodger Stadium. My State of the State, I said, watch. State's not going to come back. It's going to come roaring back. And you see that not just in terms of this historic, and when I say historic, not just by California standards, by American standards, surplus, $76 billion surplus, but also in terms of the job creation. You saw the February numbers, 41% of America's jobs came out of California, 275,000 in the last 2 months. While there may be a little bit of slowdown in the last 30 days, I think that's a temporary blip. This state's really turning a corner.
Well, and a big part of it also is that wealthy people made a lot of money last year,
that's right,
in California, and that drives a lot of the California tax base. Yep. There's no question that there are poor people in this state that need a lot of help. But should some of those folks that are paying the highest taxes in the country, should they get some of that money back?
Well, they should get the finest education system in the world. And they should get a UC system and a CSU system that are conveyor belts for talent. And we're investing historic amounts of money in those institutions. They should have clean roads and streets. They should have outstanding K-12 public education. They should have clean air, clean water. And they should be thanked for their investments in this state. We're grateful for the incredible success we've seen with the top 1% that allows us to make these kind of investments.
So we're not looking, it sounds like, at a tax rebate for the folks in the upper income level.
Well, we're doing a tax rebate to the people that have been most impacted by this pandemic, and that seems just the right thing to do. And that's an historic first as well, $12 billion tax rebate. It's the largest in the nation. There's never been a state that's offered a $12 billion tax rebate to 78% of tax filers. So we're doing that. Again, the top 1% have done extraordinarily well.
Right.
Everybody else has struggled in this pandemic, and we have to be mindful of that, and that's what this middle class tax rebate's about.
So let's talk about why we are standing right here. You're announcing on this day $1.5 billion for beautification to clean up many of the dirty streets in California, also going to be helping to finance art and local artists as well. But let's talk about the underlying problem that leads to this. How do you know that once you clean this up, the problem just doesn't come back again the next day?
Yeah, it's whack-a-mole, but you got to keep at it. You got to commit yourself, not just be passively interested episodically in these kind of cleanup efforts. Look, I've been a mayor. I've seen these things before. Once the cameras go, the place is not even cleaned up that you actually came to in the first place. So look, we're mindful of that, and that's why we're putting a multi-year plan out there. That's why we're taking originally a $100 million budget and we're converting it to $1.5 billion. It's beautification grants, it's arts and culture grants, and it's litter and cleanup grants. So the idea is to repurpose a lot of these sites so they don't go back to their original form, but it's also a commitment in the state to do something we should have been doing decades ago. I've been here 28 months. That's clean the damn place up. the state's too dirty. We can clean these things up. We just needed the resources and a plan. We've got both now.
And of course, one of the big reasons why we do see so much of this trash is the homeless encampments that are nearby, literally steps from where we're standing right now. You announced a $12 billion plan to combat homelessness, which is a historic plan that no state has ever seen.
No.
But I want to ask you about, the problem that we talk to so many homeless people and they say they don't want the housing.
Yeah, I don't buy that. And I say that with, you're right. We can always find those folks that are service resistant.
Right.
But I've been a practitioner of this for years and years and years. I've met people that were service resistant the first 20 times. We found out, you know what? The reason they're service resistant is we found out the last place they were at didn't take their dog, or wouldn't take a partner, or because they're not completely clean and sober, it required them to go to a 12-step program before they got into that. You got to meet people where they are, and that's what this portfolio offers us, the opportunity to meet people across the spectrum where they are: mental health, behavioral health, substance abuse programs, housing of all types, not just for single adults that are out there in encampments, but also families, children, and the like. And so that's the approach we're taking.
But do you think, though, that some law enforcement or other officials should have more power if somebody is clearly struggling with mental health issues, clearly struggling with addiction, to force them to get treatment?
Well, that's why I promoted and signed a number of bills in the legislature recently to increase the number of conservatorships, to empower more counties under Laura's law. We actually now made that an opt-out, not an opt-in for counties. When I came into office 2 years ago, that was an opt-in. So we're providing those tools and supports, but here's what's been missing. What's on the other side of that besides enforcement? Where's the unit? Where's the board and care home? Where is the intensive services? Someone has a roof over their head, they may end up right back out on the streets a day or two or an hour later. And so that's the approach we're taking. But yeah, there's got to be more. You want accountability? Got to be more accountability on the streets. Absolutely. We create opportunity, but we believe in responsibility. We clean these sites up. We give you choice and opportunity. We meet you where they are at a certain point, enough. Because the streets are for everybody. They're not just for some people. And I can't take it anymore. I don't like what's happening on the streets of California any more than anybody else. And with this budget, there's no more excuses. No more excuses.
And also a big part of this budget is education, one of the biggest parts of the California budget writ large. Is there any reason that all public schools in California should not be in person in the fall?
On midnight, June 30th, it's a mandate that every single school open full-time in-person instruction. Those that are open year-round, those that have summer programs, those that have extended learning, that's the expectation coming in the fall. That's the expectation, but here's the difference. It's not just rhetorical. It's statutory, and it's going to be backed up with historic investments into K through 12 education for health and safety to address those remaining concerns legitimately teachers have, as well as parents.
There are people that are saying these checks that are going out as part of this stimulus is what they call a recall rebate. And they say you're trying to buy votes and put out checks that way. What's your response to that?
We did this in January. We announced this in January before the recall was even on the radar, and people weren't even talking about it. So the fact is, that's just political theater and nonsense. What I also find interesting about the observation is no one's criticizing an historic statewide rebate to quite literally 2/3 of Californians, 78% of taxpayers.
So John Cox is campaigning with a bear and says that his nickname is Beast. What's your spirit animal?
Right now, my spirit animal is, I don't know, it's reflected, I think, in the encampment and the cleanups now. I don't know what that represents. I'll have to sort of reflect on it. But, we're proud of bears in California. Just want to treat them with love and respect.
But just, on a serious note, just as a guy, and I know the political answer is like, I'm not thinking about it. But as a man, you've got a guy that you ran against, that you beat by 24 points. He comes back, is calling you a pretty boy who's too beautiful to be governor, and is saying that he's bringing a bear around.
Look at me now, John. Look at me now.
What's your response to that? Honestly, what do you think about that?
I'm not making this up. I know you're absolutely right. We're prone to sort of the pat political response, which is I'm focusing on other things. I'm literally focused on other things. I paid no attention to any of that. I didn't watch it. I don't, it's performant. That's not my focus. That's a side, that's something else. This is what matters. Encampments, cleaning the streets, homelessness, housing, affordability, dealing with damn roads and traffic. Seriously, if I don't attend to that, all the rest of that just sucks you into a sideshow of triviality and irrelevance, and that's just not my focus.
So we should expect not circus animals coming for the next appearance.
I'm not just, we'll see what the Act 2 is on that side of it.
2020, 2021 is a year that really changed a lot of people. change their perceptions of themselves, change their perceptions of this world.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering for you and for your family, how did this last year change you?
No, I mean, I just think we're discovering an inner resiliency and a grit. You know, I had this weekend, our Mother's Day was in the emergency room where my 5-year-old literally snapped. It wasn't a fracture, literally snapped his collarbone. And watching him 2 hours later up and running around with a snapped collarbone, all we thought about was what a remarkable year this has been and what a remarkable year it's been looking it through the eyes of young children. And we've got 4 young children under the age of 11 and seeing their resiliency and their spirit. And we're trying to reflect that and we're trying to model that. And as governor and the first partner herself, we're trying to model that as well across the state. And I just want folks to know the best is yet to come. Sky's the limit for California, and I mean that. And I think this budget surplus is reflective of that. The economic opportunities that still persist in this state are second to none. And I just think, boy, those that talk about California's best days behind it, they're going to rue the day this state is roaring back.
Well, and speaking of that, June 15th, big deal. Paint a picture. What does that look like, June 15th?
Well, we're right now at 1% positivity. It's been the lowest in the nation. It's been that way for almost 2.5, 3 weeks. We're seeing this blueprint where the vast majority of counties are in orange and yellow, and we're going to move beyond the blueprint on the 15th of June. So just in a number of weeks. And that world looks a lot like the world we entered into before the pandemic. We're not wearing face coverings. We're not, restricted in any way, shape, or form of doing the old things that we used to do, save huge, large-scale indoor convention events like that where we'll use our common sense. But look, our vaccine numbers are still holding. 533,000 shots in the last 48 hours. We're at 32, almost 33 million. We can keep that going. We're going to hear a lot of horns of enthusiasm because we'll get out the other side.
And are we looking at masks after June 15th?
No, only in those settings that are indoor, only in those massively large settings where people from around the world, not just around the country, are convening and when people are mixing in real dense spaces. Otherwise, we'll make guidance recommendations, but no mandates and no restrictions in businesses large and small.
What are you most looking forward to, or your family most looking forward to, post June 15th?
Well, I just being able to walk down the streets again and taking deep breaths, hugging people, seeing strangers. I think honestly for me, I used to love, maybe other people are like this, maybe they're not, but there's nothing I enjoy more than sitting outside, having a cup of coffee on a weekend, have your baseball hat on and reading the paper, or just relaxing and then watching other people. Honestly, there's that serendipity of just watching people, strangers, and just seeing the world through a different set of eyes. Honestly, that for me is comforting, relaxing. That's a sense for me of normalcy, to see community again, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, thank you. I just want to say we just last week had our 3-year anniversary of The Issue Is, and you were our first guest on our first show, and you've been our most frequent guest in between. So
you haven't canceled me yet, huh?
We don't believe in cancel culture here.
That's right. Nor do I.
Yeah, Governor, thank you. Really appreciate these conversations, and nice to see you in a T-shirt.
Good
to see you. Thank you very much. All right. Lots to unpack there. Two of California's top political reporters, John Myers and Laurel Rosenhall, standing by. We'll talk to them next.
Everybody gets a car! You get a car! You get a car! You get a car!
I've been thinking a lot about this iconic moment from the Oprah Winfrey Show when thinking about Governor Newsom traveling the state and giving out record funding to program after program. If only people's faces, though, were like that. Let's talk about it with two of the top political reporters in California, both with the governor for the big budget proposal in Sacramento this week. Our returning champion is John Myers. He is the Sacramento bureau chief for the Los Angeles Times and the author of the Essential Politics newsletter. And Laurel Rosenhall making her Issue Is debut. She is one of the top reporters for Cal Matters. Just recently, the Sacramento Press Club named her the Journalist of the Year in California. Congratulations on that. Welcome to The Issue Is for the very first time. John, as our veteran, let's start with you. You've covered a lot of budgets over the years. Have you ever seen anything like this, $100 billion in spending?
I have not. It's hard to put this into context. I mean, I wrote for the newspaper today that this is like hearkening back to the boom times of the mid-20th century for California in the role of government. But even then, you didn't have this much money this fast to deal with. And so the governor has doled it out in lots of places. The Oprah clip is kind of funny because, I mean, it's everywhere. It's this and this and this. It's pretty darn striking.
The governor is facing three truly extraordinary circumstances between the pandemic, the looming recall election, and this enormous windfall of money. I mean, a budget like this is just truly, truly unusual. The money is an opportunity for him to sort of carry out the vision for California that he's had for a long time.
And Laurel, this still has to pass the legislature. Does the governor have the votes?
I think it's highly likely. I mean, when there's more money, there's more agreement usually, but they always fight about the details. I saw one Democrat already came out today and said that he thinks the healthcare for undocumented adults should be for all adults, not just those that are age 60 and over. So we will see some jockeying around, those kinds of particular details.
Good news, though, for the governor's front in terms of poll numbers this week. LA Times Berkeley out with this poll showing that 36% of Californians support the recall, John. Remember, 50% is needed. What I could tell in terms of body language when I was with the governor this week, it seems like he's feeling pretty confident right now.
Yeah, I would describe this poll that we published in conjunction with UC Berkeley really as showing that the governor's got a pretty good tailwind. And if I was the recall supporters, I'd be worried that the winds are a headwind for them a little bit. I mean, 36 support for the recall, 36%, I should say, that's unchanged. Opposition to the recall went up to 49%. That's almost a magic number for the governor and his backers who would try to kill this. And the governor's job approval ratings have slightly rebounded, and people feel slightly better about the state of where things are in California. The most striking number, Alex, to me in this poll is that the governor's approval rating on vaccinations has skyrocketed since we asked it in January. It's now something above 50%. That's huge. And as these pandemic numbers look better, you got to think this governor, to your point, is feeling pretty good.
Up next, this panel on the Republican challengers to the governor. But as we go to break, let's talk about some music. This week, we learned that Jay-Z is among the 2021 class of inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We also want to congratulate Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, plus Carole King, the Go-Go's, and the one and only Tina Turner. She, of course, is simply the best. So as we go to break, here's a little Proud Mary.
The governor is talking about $600. I'm talking about $2,000 for an individual and $4,000 for a family. And again, it's not just 1 year. It'll go on in perpetuity. And
former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer on Fox 11 Los Angeles with us this week. Faulconer announcing a massive tax cut plan. Let's talk about recall politics with our panel. Laura Rosenhall of Cal Matters, John Myers of the LA Times. Let's talk about that poll from the LA Times and Berkeley. It shows Kevin Faulconer, we'll bring this up, 22% tied with John Cox at 22%. Caitlyn Jenner way behind at just 6%. Laurel, how do you see the state of the recall race? And maybe let's start with Faulconer's more traditional approach.
Well, right now there doesn't appear to be a candidate who, is going to win, but that really depends on what we talked about in the last segment on the yes/no question: how many Californians want to recall the governor or not? I think that the interesting thing with Faulconer's proposal is that it's a very progressive tax structure that he's proposing, even more progressive than the very progressive tax structure we already have in California, which really relies heavily on the wealthiest Californians to pay the most taxes. So it's an interesting move for a Republican trying to get rid of a Democratic governor. That's interesting and serious compared with what we've seen from Caitlyn Jenner. There has not seemed to be any kind of mastery of political or policy issues, and she's not even clear on whether or not she voted last year.
And John, let's talk about John Cox as well. The Bear back this week in San Diego. Some officials there complaining that may be a violation of the city rules. What do you make of his approach?
I don't know what to make of his approach. I mean, the thing that struck me, Alex, is recently, he rolled out an event with the bear. It came to Sacramento, and then he complained the next day that no one talked about anything but the bear, which is kind of what happens when you roll out a press conference with a bear. John Cox has tried and come up short multiple times in every political effort that he's tried, whether it was running for office, whether it was ballot measure campaigns. That's not to say that there's something wrong with him. He just wants to keep on trying. But his ideas really come down to a Republican orthodoxy. And I think you hit something really interesting there, and Laurel did, with the Kevin Faulconer idea. It may or may not work, but it's not a traditional Republican talking point. John Cox's talking points are traditional Republican talking points, and Caitlyn Jenner's talking points are national talking points. So at this point, this is a conservative response to Gavin Newsom. Again, as you said, I think Newsom feels pretty good where he is right now.
All right, our panel returns after this. Are your night moves ready to go? The state is reopening in a major way thanks to extraordinary work by scientists. We'll preview June 15th when we come back. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was supposed to be with us this week, but had a last-minute meeting called with the president and vice president, so he'll be with us next week. Bumped by Biden again. John Myers of the LA Times, Laurel Rosenhall of Cal Matters are with us to close things out. All right, real quickly, in one sentence, Laurel, what are you most excited about doing when the state reopens on June 15th?
I am excited for my kids to have a normal summer, some summer camps, some time with the grandparents, just a really normal, fun summer.
John, what about you?
Backyard barbecue and a cold beer. I can't top it from that. Getting back together with friends, it's been an awfully long time.
Could you be more all-American? Backyard barbecue and a cold beer. Very nice. For me, it is the ability to dance with people in our studio again. But for now, we got to do it virtually. So get ready. Here I come. Little Temptations to take us out. There it is. There it is, Laurel. Woo! There it is. See you next week. More of The Issue Is.